Now we move to the discernment phase, and we ask Dr. Hagelin to make a presentation of a solution to some of our problems. Please.
Thank you. I don't need that. Laptop should be coming out. Yeah, here it is. Do you want to take this? I'll sit it on top if you wish.
Take my papers.
Thank you so much. Good morning. If we could show the first slide. I am so impressed to be among so many who are so profoundly committed to peace and social justice. It is extremely inspiring, and I'm honored to be with you. If we can bring up the first slide. That should be good. It's going to work in a moment. Okay. It's been amazing to learn as much as we have about the challenges that confront us in the cause of peace. One thing that has been a little bit lacking from my perspective so far is easy solutions. And I'm not sure there are any easy solutions. But I would like to present one novel solution that seems to work. Just before the invasion of Ukraine 2.5 years ago, the Global Union of Scientists for Peace organized an emergency peace summit in Kiev with government leaders, scientists, scholars, and military professionals from across Europe and Ukraine, of course. And in the course of that three-day conference, an approach emerged with a tremendous amount of backing scientifically that really shows promise to create peace through a whole new means. In a nutshell, the logic is simple. If I can move this forward. Behavior, human behavior, is intimately connected to the brain, to brain functioning. Stress, and there's a lot of it around these days, impairs the brain, and it negatively affects human behavior. Stress shuts down the higher brain, the prefrontal cortex. It activates the fear center of the brain, or amygdala, and putting the body in a state of fight or flight, causing violent, impulsive, fear-centered behavior. Stress in the world today is mounting. I won't try to figure out why, but high levels of stress are causing ill health, are causing psychological distress, depression, anxiety, and epidemic levels of social violence rising throughout the world. That being the case, and it is, and by the way, among people who work with conflict resolution and peacemakers, the understanding is that the first stage of conflict, of war, is mounting tensions. Political, ethnic, and/or religious tensions between rival factions at critical hotspots across the world. And if these tensions continue to mount unchecked, they will inevitably erupt as social violence. So again, that being the case, what can we do, and what do we traditionally do? We try to reduce the stressors. Oppression, poverty, injustice, prejudice, etc. But as we know, and many of us have tried, that's not easy. Alternatively to reducing the stressors, we could simply reduce the stress. All right, so what are the means, what are the known means to reduce stress in an individual mind, physiology, individual brain? How can we reduce the stress and related violent behavior? Well, there have been many approaches by science, but overall, the most effective seem to be a set of practices, let's call them meditative practices, that are designed to settle the mind and relieve stress. Some of these come from age-old traditions of yoga and others, Buddhism. And yogic meditation, or called today more generally transcendental meditation, these techniques markedly reduce stress and its effects on the brain and behavior. Now, many countries for many years have been using this approach in prisons, maximum security prisons, to relieve the acute stress of people who are behind bars and who have committed these types of violent crime by adding instruction in meditation. And over the course of these 9 countries and many years, 20 to 25 published studies have found marked reductions in crime in the rate of return to prison by 50% or more. So in that context, it works. Now, the Pentagon and the US Department of Veterans Affairs uses that same practice, transcendental meditation, as their preferred treatment, their most effective treatment against acute stress called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and related violent behavior. So this works on the individual level to reduce stress, improve happiness, and also reduce violent behavior. Okay, quick reality check. Can we practically and realistically leverage this knowledge of the brain and behavior to markedly reduce social violence and even create lasting societal peace? And the answer is, quite surprisingly, to me anyway, yes. And it's easier than you might think. Because societal stress, social stress, can be attacked on a societal level when even a modest proportion of a population is engaging in these evidence-based stress-reducing practices. It's possible to reduce social stress, and as a consequence, reduce crime and social violence, even war. As 59 published studies by now in the world's leading journals have shown. I'm not going to show you 59 studies. I'm mostly through with my presentation, but I'll flash you a few. Just to get a feeling for it, in Washington, D.C., several years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, this experiment was done to provide a national demonstration project whether a few thousand volunteers practicing advanced meditation practices designed to promote deep rest and reduce stress could have an impact on the surrounding society as a whole. And we predict this with confidence because it had been done 40 times already, but on a smaller scale. And during that study, there was a highly statistically significant drop in violent crime in Washington, D.C., and in fact, the whole city was transformed. One last study more relevant to today. It has to do with war in the Middle East. In the mid-1980s was the Lebanon War, and it was an ongoing conflict. And one brave group of research scientists decided they would set up a large meditating group in Jerusalem in the immediate vicinity of the conflict and watch what would happen. And the size of that meditating group in the dotted line, or yellow areas, would go up and down and up and down and up and down over the course of these months-long study. Correlated with the number of people who were basically relieving stress and spreading that calm throughout society, through their own interactions in society, we found a marked reduction in war violence and war deaths and war injuries, and much more progress towards peace among the rival factions. Now, this is a highly statistically significant effect, and getting a statistically significant effect at all in a social science study is challenging. I'm a physicist, a research physicist, a quantum physicist, and it's easy to get precise studies. It's easy to get statistical significance, but this is unheard of almost in the social science. This was a real effect. And when the editors of the Yale University Journal of Conflict Resolution that published this study in 1988, they published it, but they wrote a letter. It was a cover letter to that journal, and it urged other scientific groups to go out and repeat this study because, frankly, the effects were unbelievably positive, and they wanted to see it repeated. And over the next 2.25 years, 7 different scientific groups replicated that study and found similar results. Among them all, 71% drop in war deaths, 78% drop in war injuries, fewer bombs dropped, greater progress towards peace, whenever these groups were assembled, groups that were large enough and close enough to have an effect. The likelihood that all of that was just a statistical fluke is essentially 0. So, starting to wrap up, this, let's call it brain-based approach to peace, is a scientifically validated approach. In fact, no other approach to peace in history, as far as I know, has had a comparable track record of success. With all these published studies and all of these journals and several more today, where these scientific studies were reviewed and approved for publication. And this particular approach to peace is not that difficult. It's relatively easily and cost-effectively implemented in schools and colleges, and I have such a college. I'm a university president at Maharishi International University, USA. And yes, we have this program as part of our educational process. Faculty, staff, and students do their meditation twice a day. It can be implemented in the military through a peacekeeping wing of the military. It can be implemented in police training, resulting in lower crime. Even a relatively small fraction of a population produces demonstrable results. And finally, this program has been implemented by and endorsed by numerous heads of state, including presidents and prime ministers here in Latin America, and has been very effective in Mexico itself in certain school programs here. So I have to finish with some thoughts. First of all, how does this work? And what is meditation anyway? Here's where 30 seconds of physics will help. A dose of physics a day will keep the doctor away, and your wife too, probably. So our universe, nature, is structured in layers of creation. Layers of creation. There's the physical world that we know, the material world that we live in. But beneath the surface is the world of the atom, is the world of the atomic nucleus and nuclear particles. And at the foundation of it all is what Einstein called the unified field, or what we call today the heterotic superstring field. A unified field of nature's intelligence that was there before the Big Bang, that during the course of the Big Bang emerged and created all the particles and forces of nature, all of the materials of nature, the planets, the galaxies. It all comes from the source. These different worlds are very different. This is the world we understand. This is classical physics. Intuitively, we get it. The atomic world is governed by completely different laws called quantum mechanics, a new math, a new language, a new logic. The nuclear level, a whole new logic, a whole new language, a whole new mathematics. The level of the unified field, a whole new logic, language, mathematics. But anyway, we are part of nature. We have this same structure. We have a physical body made of matter. But the world of the atom lives inside of us. The world of the nucleus lives inside of us. The unified field is at our foundation. So when we look at the structure of the human mind, we see that it is really parallel to the structure of nature because the mind exists in layers. The surface mind, gross thoughts. These are the thoughts, the noise, the chaos that dominate our mind right now and all day long. You have a thought, I left the car running. These are sort of spoken thoughts, gross thoughts, concrete thoughts. But we as human beings, everyone in this room has the capacity for deeper levels of mind, abstract conceptual thinking, things like mathematics and the arts and philosophy. And beyond even abstract thinking, we have what is called our fine feeling level, fine, faint feelings. And beyond our finest feeling is consciousness, is the silent you inside of you that we rarely experience, but is the essence of what we are. So now we can understand meditation. Normally, our attention is directed outward through our senses and outward to the environment. But in meditation, you learn a technique or techniques that'll take the attention and turn it within to begin to experience quieter levels of thought, earlier stages in the development of thought. And you see, those stages of thought settle down to the experience of purely consciousness. Pure consciousness, pure abstract awareness. In the language of yoga, samadhi. And samadhi allows the self to be itself, to know itself. While the mind is active, you can't see past the mind because the mind is fluctuating and distorting. Only when the mind settles can you clearly see consciousness. And that is very, very easy to learn. So, practical purpose of this, in summary. Meditation expands consciousness. It takes our scattered mental activity, our disorderly EEG, it transforms it into coherent brain functioning. Coherent brain functioning relates to IQ, learning ability, intelligence, memory, creativity, moral reasoning, IQ. And the growth of IQ through regular meditation is substantial. And because of that, this meditative approach has been incorporated in 12,000 schools. It started at MIU, my university in Iowa, 50 years ago. Now it's in many places across Mexico and all over the world. And what's great about that is that this inner peace stabilizes this meditative experience so that it lasts during the day, so that the inner peace, you can see, is with you throughout the day. And because of that, you are anchored in silence and stability and peace and contentment. So my concluding slide is, regular practice of meditation brings inner peace, inner stability, inner fulfillment, inner contentment. It expands consciousness. It brings life-supporting behavior. You know yourself for what you really are, unbounded, universal being, and you recognize others as unbounded, universal beings. You recognize others as your own self. And that brings the golden rule of behavior, and that brings a peaceful world. So this is, you could say, world peace through inner peace, an evidence-based, scientifically proven process. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hagelin.